See, I think the future is not subliminal messaging. It's subblatant messaging.
Subblatant messaging?
Buy stuff at scamstuff.com!
That's horrible.
No?
That's the equivalent of a pop-up ad.
A verbal pop-up
It's like a human pop-up ad.
Because I'm a modern...
Subliminal messaging.
When was the first time somebody used the phrase subliminal messaging?
As I understand it, it was 1957, a man named James Vickery, who was a market researcher, and he spliced in drink Coke and eat popcorn into the reel of a movie, and apparently there was a big uptick in sales.
Okay, now I had heard that that was completely non-scientific and it was completely self-reported, which is kind of code for not true.
It was a hoax.
Oh, it was?
It was a hoax. Yes, but it introduced it into the public lexicon. It made everyone afraid that advertisers were controlling their brains.
So what's not a lie is the fact that laws were passed forbidding the practice of placing subliminal messaging into advertising content.
Yes, but that didn't stop people.
Oh, what? Wait, what?
Yes.
Wait, but there's a law.
There are lots of laws, Brian.
Hello, Brian. I'd like to introduce you to a show. It's called The Modern Rogue.
Yeah.
So the whole question about whether or not subliminal messaging works is complicated because there's so many different types of alleged subliminal messages. You could do sub-audio messaging, where something's very, very quiet, or backmasking, which we figured out is largely total BS. But most people tend to think of sub-visual messages. This is stuff that's flashed so fast that the conscious mind can't read it, but that some part of the brain seems to pick up a statistically significant impression from the messages that are embedded.
They also have things that are hidden in still images that you won't notice right away, but is allegedly worming its way into your subconscious.
So you're talking about like the hidden arrow inside the FedEx logo.
Yes, or in the Tostitos logo, where it's two friends enjoying a bowl of salsa, or maybe a ritual sacrifice.
See, I like that better because I was afraid you were gonna say TIT. It was like a sex sells thing.
Of course you were thinking that. But it's funny that you mentioned that because a lot of the times people find subliminal images where there probably wasn't anything intended by the advertiser.
Stuff like the Lion King sex star thing.
Yes, or sex in the Pepsi cans from the 90s when you stacked them.
See, there's two questions. Number one, is this intentional? Number two, even if it is intentional, does it work? And I think that just like the backmasking, a lot of those examples are just a case of being primed to look for a certain thing, and then you find it.
Precisely. So everyone was afraid of it from the 50s, and especially in the 70s onward, up until maybe around the early 80s when a bunch of research came out and they said, this really doesn't do anything.
Now, that's not to say it's not possible to affect your purchasing decisions beyond the conscious level. They call that supraliminal advertising. Stuff like when you go to the grocery store and you hear French music playing, there's a statistically significant increase in French wine sales when that happens. Same thing during the holidays, whether it's holiday music or high intensity music, they're playing the Flight of the Bumblebee and you're just running around buying stuff. That is all very, very intentional. In fact, when I worked at a movie theater, we had orange countertops installed because in thousands of A/B trials, orange countertops outsold magenta or lime green. I guess you could tell this was Cinemark in the late 90s.
Don't you ever bring Front Row Joe up to me ever
I
again.
love Front Row Joe! No?
I will cut him. I will cut his face. There's actually recent research indicating that, oh, maybe there is something to subliminal advertising, but it can't control you, it can just influence you.
So when you say there's something to it, we're not talking about forcing people to do things they don't want to or buy things that they normally wouldn't. We're talking about in large-scale trials, a statistically significant difference between using subliminal images versus not.
Right. One example has researchers giving subjects a brick, and they have to think of how many uses that they can get out of this brick. People that were subliminally flashed the IBM logo got this many uses out of it. People that were subliminally flashed the Apple logo, this many uses
No
out of it.
kidding. So it activated this thought of like, be creative, be original, think outside the box.
Precisely.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that where it's evidence that it doesn't create a need, but it does influence you trying to fulfill a need.
Now, along those lines, I would imagine that much more effective than a subliminal image would be for me to say, be really creative. Think about Apple. Like, that's something that's not subliminal at all, but I suspect would have an even larger impact.
You would imagine so. I don't know, though, because
Okay.
I've never seen any research about that.
Yeah, well, I just made that up. It's called a hypothesis.
Some of the other examples, if we look at this, like SFX magazine. The magazine is clearly SFX, but look how they've posed these models models. What do you think of when you see that
Of
title?
course, no, you complete the image and you see the word sex. Whether or not this actually works, I don't know, but my guess is out of the corner of the eye, if I saw this magazine, I'd say, like, is that magazine called Sex?
I would like a subscription to this primitive form of communication.
Yes.
One that I thought was particularly interesting is the Marlboro Formula One car.
Yeah, I'm guessing for whatever reason they didn't want to put the actual Marlboro logo, because I'm sure in different countries there's restrictions about advertising. And so instead you have this arrangement of barcodes that visually out of the corner of your eye as this thing is speeding past is gonna look pretty much what a highly blurred out Marlboro logo would look like.
Yeah, and that's an iconic image. It's been around for decades. And so it immediately makes you think, oh, I gotta have a smoke. There was also a simplistic board game called Husker in the 60s.
Husker, another fine product from Pick'em.
They were actually in trouble with the FCC for planting frames inside their commercial that said, "Get it."
Really?
Yeah.
In the 80s, there was a cartoon based on the show Alf, and they had one explosion, and for one frame in there, it showed this image of just Americana. It had the flag, it had the Statue of Liberty, it said the word America, and they busted them. They're like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, it's an explosion. We just wanted something that would maybe give it a little bit of extra pop. And it wasn't illegal because it wasn't an advertisement, but it makes you wonder how many other cases like that are out there.
Let's find out ourselves right now with our unwitting subjects.
Yeah, right here in this video, we put a whole bunch of subliminal messages that hopefully have primed the folks at home to either think of the head side of a quarter or the tail side of a quarter, because they're gonna be given a choice right now. Go ahead and fill out this poll. Choose either heads or tails. Don't go necessarily with what your favorite is, but just whichever one feels right, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not the priming, the subliminal images that we've used, makes any difference at all. Once you guys have voted, then go out and you can actually scour through the episode and find all the individual messages that we hid in there.
Then you will understand just how much we control you.
Which is donut, maybe.
Which is zero. Absolutely zero.